All right, fans, it is the Combatcast. We are live and we're going to talk some UFC fights. First, Chevy, tell people what's going on.
All right, finally, it will be upon us. July 29th, UFC 291, Poirier versus Gaethje 2 for the BMF belt. Fantastic fight card. We're also going to talk a little bit about Earl Spence and Terrence Crawford next week, too. Should be a good show. We're looking forward to next week. After that, August 5th, UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. That's a good bantamweight matchup. And then August 12th, UFC Fight Night, Luque versus Dos Anjos. RDA back in there. That's a good main event. I don't know how the rest of the card's rounding out, but should be a good striking match between those two.
Yeah, and on that UFC pay-per-view, I've been calling for it, and I hope they do it. I think Lon Bohovic and Alex Bajera should be for the vacant light heavyweight title now.
Yeah, why not at this point? Yeah, that belt's just getting passed around at this point, though.
It really is. Bohovic is a worthy contender, and if Bajera can beat him, and why not?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, sets up a possible Izzy and Bajera at light heavyweight match too, if they want to make some money off of that. So
yeah, of course. Now that will be a very exciting card, but let's talk about this past week's fight card a little bit.
Yeah. So I just want to shout out to my boy Young Jung Park, the Iron Turtle. He got a victory over Albert Duraev. He got a rear naked choke after beating him up a bit, and then he had a sweet little dance at the end. So shout out to the Iron Turtle. Love that guy. But let's talk about co-main event. Jack Della Maddalena versus Basil Hafiz, UFC debutant Hafiz.
Well, the story is basically he stepped in on short notice and had a very competitive fight that some people thought he won, and he lost by split decision. So his future might be very bright.
Yeah, he's definitely UFC caliber for sure. He, after they do the weigh-ins and they do those ceremonial face-offs or whatever, Hunter was, the one officiating it, where he keeps the fighters apart or whatever. And when Basil walked up to me, said, thank you for changing my life or whatever, something like that, which, is good to see guy seeing that he's getting an opportunity and he made the most of it for sure. He went in there very wrestling heavy, basically took Jack down at will. Didn't get a lot of damage done when he was on the ground, but he was pretty good on the feet too. He ate a lot of heavy shots from Jack, but he landed a few of his own as well. I personally thought that Jack won because of the way that they talk about the judging in MMA now and how damage is, really the main thing. And if the damage is completely even, then you move on to those other criteria. I think in the first round, even though Jack was on his back at some points, on the feet, he did all the damage and didn't really take much damage on the ground. And I think that was the round that people were, going one way or the other. So I thought Jack deserved the win. I do think that, that weight cut for back-to-back weeks is rough.
Oh, true.
So probably made a big difference for him. But don't want to take anything away from Basil. He was in there to fight. He put up a very good fight. And like I said, UFC caliber, I'm sure that they're going to sign him for multi-fight deal.
Main event.
Yeah, main event. Holly Holm versus Mayra Bueno Silva.
Bueno Silva, she gets the finish with a submission and round 2. So I thought this was actually, even though this fight card wasn't really well talked about or well received, I have to say that's an impressive finish. And I think, hey, cameo.
Guinness, don't worry about it.
Yeah, she's a fan of Silva. I get it. So yeah. I thought, very impressive for her and great timing because now, with a vacated, women's bantamweight championship, she might be. We know Pena's going to be there, but she might be the other half.
Yeah. I think she's definitely earned it. If not getting that title shot, I think maybe one more and then she gets it. It's a little up in the air, I think, right now because of Amanda leaving. But she definitely made an argument for it, I think. And I think she'll do very well against those top girls for sure. She's dangerous, especially down at 135. She looks great. So let's move on. You want to talk about this week's fight card?
No, let's talk about fight news. Michael Venom Page.
Michael Venom Page has announced his free agency from his contract is over with Bellator. So do you think we're going to see him in the UFC?
Man, I'm not sure with him. Like a 50-50. I think the money he may want for the value that he's probably worth to the UFC might not be there. It might be a good time to gamble on yourself, though. Like, if you're not going to go back with Bellator, I don't know. Other than that, I mean, I guess you fights in Japan, or you gamble on yourself and you go to PFL and you hope you can get that $1 million.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't think that the UFC is going to want to pay him what he is worth, what he thinks he's worth as well. Anyway, I don't think he's very young, so he doesn't have too many more fights left in him. So he should definitely try to go for money fights. But if he does come to the UFC, I tell you what, the first person I want him to fight is Wonder Boy. I want to see that matchup so bad between them. But yeah, you're probably right. We probably see him go to Japan or maybe PFL.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that most likely would be the place to be. I mean, in PFL, maybe he'll, maybe he'll do well for himself. You never know.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but I did see on the internet that I guess there was some additions to the UFC roster. There's no pictures or anything, but if you looked up the athletes, I had AJ McKee and both the Pitbull brothers were on the UFC roster. I don't know if they've been taken off since then, but I know that, Bellator is trying to sell the company to, it was originally the PFL. So there might be a possibility that they're letting some of these guys out of their contracts to make their own choices beforehand. And, maybe we're going to get some big announcements.
That would be pretty big. Yeah. I mean, we'll wait and see. I'd be very excited for the Pitbull brothers, especially there. I mean, AJ McKee's very young too, but I feel like the Pitbull brothers could almost make like an immediate impact.
I do believe that Nemkov went over to one championship too. He would have been a great person to get in the UFC, but I believe he's over in one championship. So, might be the end of an era here with Bellator. I wouldn't mind seeing their roster get folded in with the UFC. They definitely need to cull the overall roster if that happens for sure, though.
Interesting. Wonder where Brendan Ward might end up there.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go, Brendan Ward.
Let's see. We'll see.
Yeah. We'll be talking about him in a few weeks as well, too. So he's got a fight coming up in August. But all right, let's talk about this upcoming fight card. Looking forward to this one. Back over in England, always a good show over in England. Great fan base. Also, early fight card. Main card starts at 3 p.m. We love that over here on the East Coast. So, couple of prelims to highlight first. Brian Barberena versus Mahmoud Muradov is on a prelim. Brian Barberena doesn't have any boring fights, so definitely keep an eye out for that one. And then Davey Grant is fighting Daniel Marcos. So Davey Grant, featured bout on the prelims. Excellent fighter. Keep an eye out for him as well. All right, let's talk about, let's get into this co-main event. Molly Meatball McCann versus Julija Stoliarenko.
All right. Julia, 10-7-2. She's got 9 submission and 1 decision, so she doesn't like to go to the distance. She does go for finishes a lot of times. That's something I can say. She's lost 4 out of 5. And she's going against Molly McCann, who's 13-5, 6 KOs, 7 decisions. She's won 3 out of her last 4, and 2 were finishes. I think the story here is that we actually talked about this a couple of days ago. You had sent me a link to something. This kind of feels like really the ultimate setup win for Molly to be in this position. So, yeah, I'm going with Molly. I'm going with Molly with a TKO, probably round 2.
Yeah, a little bit off track, but I know Molly is a draw, but I don't understand how she's the co-main event. she's not even ranked, and she's fighting Stoliarenko, like you were saying, who is 1-5 in the UFC. So does not deserve to be a co-main event. Paul Craig should be the co-main event, but anyway, I don't know. We'll talk about this one. I assume Stoliarenko just keeps trying to pull guard and stuff, whatever it takes to try to get an armbar. That's the only way that she wins fights. She's very dangerous with them, but that's the only way that she wins fights. Molly keeps us on the feet. She wins 100%. I think that it's a frustrating fight for Molly because Julia is not going to engage with her on the feet very much. So I think we just see Molly, beat her up when she is on the feet, but it's just going to be a decision win.
All right.
All right, let's move on to the main event. I am very excited for this. Tom Aspinall returning from ACL knee injury versus Marcin Tyburia.
Marcin Tyburia is 24-7, 9 KO, 6 sub, 9 decision. I consider him a consistent heavyweight. Like he's not to me, like he's a tough guy to put away, and he's one of those guys that he can get you in deep waters and he can win a decision a lot of times, I feel like, too. Tom Aspinall, though, 12-3, 9 KOs, 3 subs. He's won 8 out of his last 9 before getting injured in his last fight with Curtis Blades. So this guy was on an absolute tear. So to me, the real story is the Tom Aspinall before his injury going to show up here, or will he be slowed down? If he's not slowed down and it's the Tom before, then I like Tom here. Could be an interesting, fun fight, but I think Tom TKO. I'll go round 2.
Yeah, we're right in sync with this one. Hopefully, we see 100% healed and ready to go Tom Aspinall, and if we do, he makes short work of Marcin. No disrespect to Tybura, but Tom is just levels above him. I think. I think he's my dark horse for the heavyweight division. I talked about it before. I do think that it's possible he gives John Jones problems because he's maybe the only other person in the division that's as athletic as John. So I'm with you. I think we see a round 2 TKO. And if he doesn't TKO him, he, knocks him down with strikes and then jumps on a neck or whatever and gets a submission. And either way, a round 2 finish for Tom. I hope we see him back 100%.
All right. And that's going to really do it for us this week, folks. Chevy, why don't you tell people one more time what we got coming up?
All right, tune in next week. Very excited. July 29th, UFC 291, Poirier versus Gaethje 2 for the BMF belt, and Earl Spence versus Terrence Crawford. We haven't talked about boxing in a while. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, so this still coming that weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and then August 5th, UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov. And then August 12th, UFC Fight Night, Vicente Luque versus RDA.
RDA. All right. Consistency should be a good one. Thank you, Randy. Shout out to Randy before we leave. Always appreciate the love. Guys, watch the fights this weekend in the UK, but we can't wait till next week so we can talk about some UFC and Gaethje versus Poirier. That's what I'm mostly looking forward to. So, All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week.